Welcome to the $1 Million Multi-Op Podcast. Here, you're going to find education, entertainment, and a little inspiration on how to get to the next level. Are you a DJ company owner that's looking for the secret sauce? Congrats, you found it.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to the $1 Million Multi-Op Podcast. I'm your host, as always, David Osborne with BlueprintLearn.com. On today's podcast, I got a real treat for y'all. On occasion, I get some really amazing expert level folks from outside our industry that can help shine the light on some stuff that we're all working hard on to improve, and getting that outside perspective really helps us find those blind spots in our business. So today I've got none other than Neil Stevens. Welcome, Neil.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, David. We got a big audience here today.
We do, man. We got the big audience happening.
I love it.
Neil and I are separated by maybe 15 minutes of driving, but we're still hitting on the virtual platform. I got a really cool opportunity to hear Neil speak a couple months ago at his own business. Neil is the president and CEO of Oconee State Bank, a regional bank that is really amazing. It's the bank we use. And I was blown away with what he had to say. So Neil, why don't you kind of get things kicked off a little bit by just talking a little bit about what Oconee State Bank is and your role in the organization.
Sure. Glad to, David. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on. And thank you for the job that you do at your own business, but also to help others out there. So that means a lot. When leaders start training leaders, that's a big step. And I really appreciate your work. Oconee State Bank, we're 65 years old. We started in 1960, believe it or not. A group of basically farmers got together and decided they didn't want to drive all the way to Athens to do business. So back then, Athens was a long way from Watkinsville. We're in the Watkinsville area, just a bedroom community of Athens. But over the years, the bank has grown, and I guess I was I brought in, it was around 2016, I think it was October of 2016, when the former CEO, who had been here for actually 40 plus years, I think he was CEO for 20 of those years, decided to retire and move on. And my charge was to take the bank to the next level. The bank had always done well. It had a great vision, had a great customer base, great service, a lot of incredible people. But the future of the bank, the board was looking for someone to take it outside the bounds of Oconee County, but at the same time, keep Oconee County the centerpiece and the central hub. And they wanted to improve the culture and continue to build upon the culture that was already there. And so in 2016, about 9 years ago, this October will be 9 years, I joined. We were a couple of $100 million in assets at the time. Today, we're nearly $700 million. It's been all organic growth. We haven't bought anyone during that time. We've done team lifts and things of that nature, and we're in 6 or so markets across Georgia and Tennessee. So it's been a good run. Our focus is small to medium-sized companies and professional firms and light manufacturing firms. We also do consumer stuff. But our main focus is business banking and the deposits and loans that come along with that. So that's a little recap of 65 years and just a few short sentences there.
Yeah, and we're relatively new to the Oconee State Bank world. I'd say we're 4 or 5 years in on the business side and like 1 or 2 years on the personal side. But our mutual connection, how you ended up, us talking today, is Chad Brown, who I've been working with for a long time and is my CPA, and he's been on this podcast before. He's a good friend. I remember when I was looking for a banking solution for the business, I said, what do you suggest? Without even a hesitation, he's like, Oconee State Bank. And I said, why? Tell me, because banks are banks. He's like, no. He's like, there's banks that are your national banks that are really tech savvy, and they're set up like everyone thinks about a bank, and you're just a number. And if you go to them for a loan, they're going to tell you the same advice. If you want better loans, go to a credit union. We tried that. We did the credit union thing. We've done all the things, but then that's like the other side of the pendulum, And then when we came to Oconee State Bank, the thing that struck me was you've got that national level banking infrastructure, but I mean, Joe Hill's my guy. If I have a question, I just call Joe. I've got a guy, I can walk in and people know me. They'll pick up the phone, they'll call me. Joe even offered one time to drive documents to my house. I'm like, it's such a great personal experience with high culture and high tech. So I just put me on a commercial, Neil.
Well, absolutely, and I appreciate that. We a bank that I was with eons and eons ago that's no longer in existence. One of their slogans was "Large enough to serve you, small enough to know you," and that is really important for us. Is for us to have that personal relationship that you can call your banker anytime, day or night. And we're there to help.
It's great. There's going to be people listening to this podcast that are going to wish that you're in their market. So, you mentioned it in the kind of the intro. Developing leaders is something I know you're passionate about, and I know you're speaking and you're getting on that's the whole reason I got to see you speak in the first place, is you're presenting about leadership to other leaders nationwide. Before we get into the weeds, if you could think of one, like the first thing that comes to mind, what is one leadership principle that comes out of your mouth more often than not when you're just guiding or mentoring younger leaders?
Yeah, I think investing in your people. I think if there's one thing that I could say, and there's a lot that surrounds that, but authentically investing in your people, meaning that you don't treat your team as a transaction, but you work through an intentional process to truly invest and bring about transformation in their personal life, in their business life, and to be someone that they remember as a leader worth following. I think that's the number one thing that comes to mind is invest. Take the time to invest.
Yeah. And I think that's something that stood out to me when I heard you speak, was your idea of being a leader worth following. And you told some stories of leaders that made an impact on you, that were memorable for you. And you spent most of your talk talking about a leadership framework, which I've praised you multiple times on, and I've talked about to other people, and I've tried to explain to other people, but there's no better person to explain it. So kind of dive in a little bit. Talk to us about your leadership framework, maybe just the overview, and then we can kind of get into each section.
Yeah, so if you kind of look at the entire overview of how it's packaged, it's about leading life on life. So really what the principles are built on is life on life leadership, meaning what I just mentioned. It's investing in others in a one-on-one personal way. You don't have to be their best friend, but to invest in them in a one-on-one intentional personal way, what I like to call life on life. Because people they're going to bring things home into work, and they're going to bring things from work into their household. I mean, you can't help but, you can't separate those two. One's probably tempered more one way or the other when you're home or work, but you're struggling with home things at work. And so really a life-on-life leader is able to dig into that on a one-on-one basis and create the integration. But the framework itself is made up of 4 simple principles. It's and I believe if we do this well, this is the framework of life-on-life leadership. It's loving others. And you think about the word love, and this is an action, not this is in its verb form, right? It's showing care to others. It's valuing others. So loving others. The second one is equipping. That's the E, equipping others, meaning that we're taking the time to help them develop their specific skills to do their job well. I think so often we put people in positions and just let them go and think they know how to get the job done, and we don't really take time to equip effectively. And then the A in that framework is affirming others. And that has kind of a two-sided coin there. Affirmation meaning that, David, you do a good job. You need to hear it from me. Nice work, David. And name something specific that you did. Everybody likes that kind of affirmation. Some like it public. Some don't like it public, but however someone receives affirmation, make sure you're giving that effectively. And then the D is developing others. And most people accept jobs in companies and organizations because they want to be developed, and many times they leave because of a lack of development. And when I say develop, it's a little different than equipping. Development is more about the longer term person and the career path and the direction that you are routing someone over the period of time. And you have to sort of meet them where they are in that. So loving, equipping, affirming, developing, and you do that really well. Going back to affirming just a moment, I also, the other side of that coin is accountability. In fact, I was going to name that accountability, but it had a negative connotation to it. But you hold others accountable by affirming them. So, for instance, if you were not doing well at something, I would come to you and say, David, definitely I would want to see improvement, but I would say, David, you can do this really well. You have the capability of doing this. Or if you don't have the capability, we could talk about things that you do well, and put it in light of affirming versus coming in and laying down the gauntlet and saying, you're doing an awful job. You walk away feeling bad, but when you approach it from the standpoint of affirmation, it makes you want to hold yourself accountable. So that L.E.A.D, it takes life-on-life leadership to do that. And those are the 4 little principles.
Okay, so that's the thing that when I talk about how great it is, there's one giant takeaway, right? You just described loving others, equipping others, affirming others, developing others. Every one of those 4, the first word is different. The second word is others. And leadership is caring for other people, regardless of your title. And I'm a big Simon Sinek fan. He talks about how leadership really has nothing to do with the actual job title. It just has to do with caring for the people that are around you. And your exact framework has the word others in it 4 times. Leadership
Yes.
is about other people.
Yes. Well, leadership, Simon Sinek is great, and you're right. He talks about wanting the responsibility because of the job responsibility and what you get to do, not the title or the perks it brings. But I would say it this way: you want to work on your personal power versus position power. Because if you have personal power, meaning that people follow you because you invest in them and you care about them, versus they will follow you because of your position. They have to if they want the job. They may leave you. They won't necessarily stay there. But position power is always second. It has to start with personal power, because they follow you because they want to follow you. And what you want, if you promote somebody in your company, you want everybody around saying, yay, yes, I'm working for David. I get to work for David. Yeah, he's been made the leader here, not, oh my gosh, I can't believe they put David in this role. Oh goodness, they'll follow you because of the position, but they'll follow you out of duty versus following out of delight. And I think that's the real difference when you talk about others. It ain't about you or me as leaders. It's not about us. It's all about the people that we lead. And the minute we start making it about us, it becomes inauthentic, and you lose the personal power there.
Neil got the power up because talking about personal power. I like it. That's an honor to get that power up. Yeah, personal power over position power. That, I like the alliteration of it. Honestly, it's very easy to remember. It's easy, and it's got a nice flow to it. And I think people are going to respond to that. What do you, in your experience, as a CEO, previous banking experience, also when you're going out and you're speaking in the community and you're interacting with leaders and you're teaching them this framework and you're explaining it maybe to the people that are your direct reports that are new to Oconee State Bank, and you're trying to explain this process, how they should love on their direct reports, et cetera. What is the one out of the 4 that seems to be the biggest struggle area for leaders?
David, it is really, really interesting. It depends on the leader, and it truly does. I think a lot of it has to do with personality profile. Um, I think there are those who do a great job on the loving and caring side. But if you look at their personality profiles, they probably have those tendencies, as that's how they like to respond to things. And so, but if I had to name one that I think is consistently probably deficient that I see, it's probably the development piece. I don't think companies in general have a true path for developing their teams. Regular one-on-one sessions where they're garnering feedback on where that individual wants to take their career. Sessions where they coach them on how to become better, maybe better preparing for a sales call, maybe better presenting themselves in front of a group, whatever it might be. A true defined career path, because it's hard work. It's just a challenge to sit down. If I were going to put a development plan in place for you, I got to get to know you. I got to get to know your dreams. I got to be able to read between the lines, and I've got to be able to articulate that well. And it takes work and time and effort. And I think most companies and most leaders get so busy. There's so many things that have to be done that crowds that space out. And they're thinking, well, gosh, we don't really have time for this. Just know that I care about you. And what ends up happening is good people can tend to leave because they don't feel like they're being truly invested in from a developmental perspective. And that's big today. That's really big. And that's probably the one area that I see is most commonly deficient. But like I said, it goes back to the leader, because some struggle with loving. Many may struggle with the affirmation piece.
Do you think like the loving and the affirming tend to go together as a skill set because it's caring for like the emotional intelligence of a person?
I do. I think loving and affirming are in a segment. I feel like equipping and developing are in a segment. If you kind of want to box those into two categories, they're different. They're drastically different. In other words, loving others and affirming others. Loving is showing genuine care, and the book gets into 8 practical ways we can do that. One is intentional listening. Another is flexibility. The affirming of that really is about holding them accountable to a standard in a way that is uplifting and edifying and about them versus, like I say, coming down too hard on them. And also showing them appreciation and encouragement, encouraging them. Everyone needs encouragement, and being attuned to that. So loving and affirming, very similar, but also drastically different. Same with equipping and developing in that category. Equipping, more short-term skill building, development, more long-term career building.
I'd have to guess, just from my own experience, plus the conversations I have with leaders in our industry, that equipping seems like, yeah, we should teach our people how to do the things to be good at their job because that's required. It seems operational. Developing, I would have to guess, maybe you can shine some light on this, but it seems maybe scary as someone who's an owner. If you're talking to someone on your team and you say, hey, what are your life goals? And they're like, well, in 5 years, I'd like to move to Seattle and do my own thing. And you're like, I don't want to help you do that, because like, I want you here. Where equipping feels internal, developing feels a little bit external. It's like, I'm helping you climb your own ladder, and you got to have maybe an abundance mindset to be okay with that. Does that match what you're saying?
Yes, I think you're dead on. By the way, Seattle's not a bad place to live. I just returned from Seattle yesterday. First time I've been, but the problem is they only get 3 months out of the year that's really sunny and nice. I think the other 9 months it spits rain at you all day. But nonetheless, but you're right, David. Equipping is about adding a tool to a tool belt. I mean, if you're building a house, you need a hammer, you need the screwdriver, you need the saw. I mean, you need the tools to get the house built. Developing is truly about the longer term. What do you want this house to look like? Where do you want this house to be? And it can be frightening because you start thinking, okay, gosh, am I going to learn something here where this individual wants to leave our company? Well, guess what? Whether you know it or not, that's what they're thinking. And there's a saying one of my good friends says, it's bad news is not like wine. Bad news does not get better with time. So, if indeed that individual is already thinking about leaving, what better thing to do than to help them achieve their dream in the next 2 or 3 years? Because guess what? When they go to that next job, they're going to be raving about you and probably telling people, go work for that company. I know Lululemon, the CEO there, says, I want to see your future resume. And they have a lot of college kids that work there and such. But what is your future resume? Because we want, as Lululemon, we want to help you achieve that future resume, which means it may not be with us. It may be somewhere else. And guess what? They're referring all their friends back to Lululemon for clothing purchases and such, but also, to work there as an employee. So a great book out. I can't remember who wrote it. I read so much, but it's been out a few years. It's called The Dream Manager. It's a dream manager, a purple book. The cover is purple. But it really, what the book is about is understand the dreams of your team members. And some of them may want to get into nursing or go into a whole different field. And what can you do to help their dream come true? Some want to get their house paid off. Some want to become the CEO of the organization at someday. I mean, so what are their dreams, and understand those, and you have a much better chance to retain them, because whether you like it or not, those thoughts are occurring. You get a chance to shape those if you have conversations around development. And believe it or not, they may just end up staying if you put a great development plan in place. But you're dead on about the differentiation of those two words. Yep.
I see it all the time in my industry. The typical path for someone in our industry is they work as a solopreneur. They're doing events. They're entertaining on their own. They get super busy because the demand is high. They bring new people on, and it's as soon as you start bringing people on, you start feeling like, well, they're going to take my business because I spent my whole career taking other people's business. That's how you came up in the business. So it takes a lot of maturity. It takes a lot of skills like learning delegation, learning system building, like building the infrastructure so that if someone were to leave, you have a way to bring someone else up.
Yes.
I think that's kind of the step one. If someone's listening to this, they're like, that's a nice thought, Neil and David, that's cool. But how do you do it? I mean, I think it's really, you have to have systems and processes. You have to have training programs. You have to have your development piece. You have to have your equipment, your equipping and your developing pieces kind of ironed out so that you can bring new people in if someone leaves and when someone leaves, because they're going to eventually. That's a natural part of life, whether it's 2 years or 40 years at some point.
Well, you're right. You got to have the process in place. And the immediate thing that I thought about when you said that, and I don't know how many college football fans we may have in the audience, but the NIL and everything that's happened there. And then you think about Coach Nick Saban in Alabama and the number of coaches that left to go coach their own teams. Well, for years, I mean, he's retired now, obviously, but it didn't hurt the Alabama program. Nope. I mean, it didn't hurt it. In fact, it enhanced it because everybody wanted to come work for Nick Saban because that gave them the opportunity to go do something great. And that Alabama program only got better and stronger. And so I think it takes confidence in your abilities.
Yeah.
And if you're timid and always worried about, I'm going to keep this a secret, or I'm not going to share this because this person may end up leaving or whatever, well, they probably will end up leaving anyway, and you've limited the potential of your organization by not fully developing and sharing with your team. So I think it's a matter of, like you said, confidence and having a bench strength that you're constantly working on, and that's really big.
Well, I like the term bench strength. That, I mean, as a, hey, listen, we're all, well, you and I are rooting for the dogs. Let's put it that way. But like,
Get up.
I
Get
think,
up.
but I'm thinking it's a powerful way to explain depth, and a powerful way to explain, when your starting quarterback goes down, you got another guy. When that guy goes down, you got another guy. Neither one are
Absolutely.
as good as the starting quarterback, but they could be with the right
Yeah.
development. Um,
That's what keeps me up at night here. I mean, and we, for the most part, have really good depth and bench strength. There are a couple of areas. It's literally on my 2025 list to solve is to create succession in a couple of areas where I think we have weak bench strength. And that's one of the reasons why we're focusing so heavily on leadership and development. But you're right. It's all about the depth, and because invariably things happen. It might not even be someone leaving to go somewhere else. It could be a spouse that transfers. It could be an illness. It could be, God forbid. I mean, we had a tragic situation happen. Someone passed away, late last year here at our organization, and so there's just so many reasons why you need that depth, and a lot of organizational leaders don't think about that. They get too caught up in the day to day to really think on the longer term with that. So, great point.
Yeah, and I think it's a connection that I'm making in my head here is that again, knowing our industry really well, a lot of our listeners have told me, and I'm aware of the struggle, and I feel like I used to be this way, but a lot of our listeners struggle with holding people to a high standard without being the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance the high challenge and the high support?
Yeah, so I think that's the magic words right there: high challenge and high support. We all kind of know what challenge is. We all want to achieve. We have to achieve certain goals and certain metrics. And I mean, if you don't, you're mediocre, and that's the last thing any organization, I think, listening to this podcast wants to be. You want to be the best you can possibly be. So yeah, how do you do that? And how do you set the bar high without creating a toxic environment? And it does rest in that support. And we define support here. You could come up with different definitions of it, but the way we define supporting others is what we call our BEST principle, BEST, means that we believe the best in each other, expect the best from each other, seek the best for each other, and tell the best about each other.
Yeah.
Meaning, I feel like if you can truly, and that's hard to do when it's tested, when you don't like someone or someone you feel like you've been wronged or whatever. It's really hard to believe the best, expect the best, seek the best, and tell the best. But when a leader can do that really well with a team member that they're leading, I think it causes them to want to rise to the challenge. It goes back to affirming them by holding them accountable by affirming them, because it causes them to want to reach that challenge. And when you put high performing individuals together, magic happens as long as you give them the support that they need, the encouragement they need, practice that best principle. If it's just all about the numbers and nothing else, and they feel like they're not cared for or invested in, they don't have the tools, they're not equipped, it's just pound the table, you get the job done. If you don't like it, you can go find somewhere else to work. That's where the toxicity can creep in and cause a problem. But I think you're doing your team a disservice if you don't hold them to a high standard, as long as you give them the support they need.
Highly agree with that. I think this is our last question. Because you've done this before, well, I don't know the situation when you stepped into Oconee State Bank. So, but you have experience doing something successfully and then stepping into an organization that you weren't part of, and then you had to improve that organization. So I'm gonna twist the way I ask it though. Let's say that now, 2025, you had to step into a new organization that was already existing, that had some disengaged culture, that had some toxicity, that didn't have that leadership that didn't have that best framework. And you were just like, all right, priority one as CEO, as leader, how do I untangle this? What's the first thing you're going to go to do to just get sense of it and start making cultural improvements?
Yeah, I have some, I think, some very practical advice there. But before I do that, I would challenge the leaders listening to this. Even if you are doing a great job at the organization you're with, I challenge myself on this. If you were to fire yourself and then rehire yourself and drive back into the parking lot, what would you change or do differently? And I think that's a question that we all should ask from time to time. But back to your specific question. I think the first thing to do is have a series of town hall meetings. Have some one-on-one meetings, depending on how large the organization is. It could be just one-on-ones with individuals if it's a really small organization. If it's got a few 30, 40, 50, 60 people or so, have some roundtable discussions within groups and just ask the question, what do you think we've done well? And where do you think we can improve? And truly listen. After that, I think as time begins to evolve, you've got to create a shared purpose, a shared vision that everybody gets behind. Because likely what's happened in that organization, if it's not unified, and if there's the things that we mentioned earlier, infighting or silos, there's likely a lack of a shared purpose. So I would encourage one to really look hard at your vision, mission, and values. And if you got a vision statement that you can't memorize in a sentence, get rid of it. If it's a half a page long that nobody knows, or if you have to dust it off, or if you don't even have one at all, I think as a leader, you need to create a shared purpose, whether that's a vision, mission, value statement, whatever it is. I think the way you begin to do that is to listen to what you're doing well, what you're not doing so well, find out where people are coming from, and then slowly begin to create this shared purpose. And what you will find is the ones who don't buy into it will self-select. People will begin to rally around. They'll start speaking that same language. And then when that starts to happen, man, that's where the magic occurs. And we like to say here that we compete for each other and not against each other. I think that's really important.
I love that so much. I have no notes. That was an excellent answer. I think anyone that's listening, whether you feel like you've got a medium culture, a terrible culture, or even a great culture, I think you can take a lot of nuggets from what Neil's talking about. I think something that's really important for you to share, Neil, is how they can find your book, because I think people should check that out. How can we get a copy of the book?
Well, it's on Amazon, but in full disclosure, I think Amazon keeps almost all of the money from that, and I don't make anything off the book. Just so you guys know that we give it to our foundation here at Oconee State Bank. We have a foundation called the Remarkable Foundation, and the less I think. The book's $13. I think we sell it for $25, and so the portion after the book's paid for goes straight to our foundation. The best way to get it, if you will email me at N as in Neil, N Stevens with a V at Oconee, OCONEE, OconeeStateBank.com. I will send a link to you where you can get it off of the publisher Hulu, who publishes this, and you're helping the communities that we serve in our markets by doing that.
Neil, this has been an absolute pleasure. I've learned a lot. I picked up a lot. I got lots to think about. I'm really excited that you got to get on the podcast today, and you were a sensational guest. So thank you again. And for everyone listening, we always have free resources on the website at blueprintlearn.com/resources. And Neil, thank you one more time.